What is up, YouTube family and Discord family? TradeModeJames here with Zone Trading Group. Second video of the day, guys. I'm going to show you guys how to master your trendline game. All right, before I do that, guys, make sure, as always, you like this video. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified when I go live. All right, let's get it. All right, I have a couple examples drawn in here. We're going to find some more too in this video because I got to make a 10-minute video. So we're going to start with these two examples. Guys, trendline is a powerful game, all right? I mean, you can really just sit here and use trendlines and make money in these markets. Now, I highly recommend using other forms of technical analysis to go along with this, like supply and demand and a couple other indicators like your 50 SMA and your 200 SMA, but you can just use the trend lines. But for now, we're gonna leave the SMA on here, right? So what I did was, guys, I found my demand zone here, right? I drew my trend line in to the nearest touch point on this trend line. So we have a new touch point on this trend line, a valid trend line here, and we're waiting here to see if price wants to come down and find support here, all right? And make a higher high, because that's what price has been doing, right? It came down, making higher high, pull back, higher high, pull back, higher high, pull back, higher high, pull back, higher high, and continues to do that until we hit this supply zone up here where price just falls out of the heavens, falls out of the skies down into the abyss. And what happened here was, the reason why your trendline game needs to be strong is because of moves like this, all right? You could already take the supply zone sell here, right? But if you didn't do that and you don't know supply and demand, and you're new and you're only using trend lines, look what happens here. Price is telling you exactly what's going to happen. And I mean, price action is king in my world, guys. It tells me everything I need to know. So when price starts falling out of here and just falls below that 50 SMA with momentum and just, you know, voluminous red candles on the 4-hour time frame, you already know that it's probably going to break that trend line once it gets below that 50 SMA with this big red candle here. That's just very obvious to me, right? And it did find a little bit of support here, but it did break straight through. All right, so you could have gambled a little bit here. The smart play is to take the breakout, all right? Take the breakout of the trend line. All right, but you could have taken, you know, if you're an advanced trader and you know what you're doing and you know what you're looking at, you could have taken these two things into account and got in a little bit early. All right, you're falling out of this supply zone here. All right, you're falling out of that supply zone, and we know it's a supply zone. Look to the left. This is a supply zone. All right, it's fallen out 2 times before. And you're also falling with a lot of momentum, and you're breaking through that 50 SMA. Usually when price breaks below a 50 SMA on a 4-hour time frame, you're going to see some downside. Just the same as when price breaks above the 50 SMA on a 4-hour plus time frame, you're going to see some upside. That's just how it works, all right? Now, how far it's going to go is unpredictable. We don't know. But we know that when we're falling out of the supply zone with crazy momentum, crazy volume, and we bust right through that 50 SMA with no resistance, and we come down and get below that trend line, a good entry point here, a great entry point is when it breaks structure here, right? If you want to play it safe, all right? This is the play right here. Now, if you want to be a little bit ambitious like me, I like to just take the breakout and set my stop loss at structure right here. If it comes back up, if it finds support and comes back up to the yellow line, I get stopped out, which is basically at the 50 SMA. If it comes back up and retest the 50, I just take a loss and move on to the next trade. But if you want to play it safe, you want to wait for either the retest here, right? Because typically, I would say about 80% of the time on a breakout of a trend line, a valid trend line, you're going to get a retest back to that trend line to find either resistance or support. So in our case here, typically we would have found a breakout and then found some support here, came back up to the trend line or the 50 SMA, found resistance, and made this big move down. But that didn't really happen here. We kind of just fell straight through. All right, so like I said, if you want to be ambitious, just know where to put your stop loss. Always put it in structure, and make sure you're getting at least 2 to 1 on your trade. 3 to 1 if it can happen, right? Like 2 to 1 on a bare minimum. And sometimes, I guess, if you want to take a 1-to-1 trade, you can if you know what you're doing, you know what you're looking at. But I highly recommend new traders at least be looking for 2 or 3 to 1 on your money when you're making a trade, on a breakout trade. Or any trade for that matter. So this was a good example of a trend line break and how you could have made money. Like I said, you could have taken the supply zone, sell right here, all right? Because how do I know it's supply zone? We talked about this in the previous video. Price came up and left real quick, 2 times previous here, right? So, and this was a big sell-off here. So not only could you have made money here on the supply zone fall off here, you could have made money on the break of the 50 SMA. You could have made money on the breakout of the trend line. We're talking about trend lines here, so that's what we'll stick with. All right, so this was a good trade, and didn't really get a retest until way up here, and even here we found some resistance, and you could have made money on this touch point on the trend line up here. That's a good example. Let's move on to another one. Here's another trend line I have drawn in, guys. This one actually did get a retest. And like I said, I would say probably, you know, just from experience that about 80% of the time, you're going to get a retest off of a breakout of anything, a zone, you know, a fib zone, a golden zone, a trend line. You're gonna get a breakout even on a break of a 50 SMA. All right, so on this one, price, you know, we have multiple touch points on this trend line. This is a 4-hour time frame. All right, price came up, came down, found support, came up, broke that 50 SMA. You could have took a trade here and make some money on the way up because it broke that 50 SMA. And it kind of just was making higher highs until finally we hit a supply zone, a big supply zone, right here. Boom, supply. We'll do it like this. And we already know that it fell out of the supply zone because we can see this now. It's a little bit more difficult in the moment, right? Looking back, it's a lot easier to see what's going on. But in the moment, it's not this easy. But same kind of situation here. We're falling out of the supply zone. All right, we have a reversal candle here and a big red voluminous candle here with some consolidation after that dip. The consolidation actually took us to the breakout, all right? So the consolidation had us move over to the other side of the trend line and took us down below that 50 SMA. Price came down, all right? And then it came back up for that retest, all right? So on this move, I typically would not have taken this trade just based off the fact that it was consolidating and there wasn't much volume coming through the trend line as opposed to the other one where it just fell straight through. So I would be looking for a retest trade on this trade. So price broke out, came down, all right? Up, down, consolidate, drop down. And from here, it came back up for the retest, all right? This is your entry right here. This touch point right here is your entry point, all right? And you would have made a lot of money on the downside. You probably would have took profit here at this double bottom or even maybe a little bit higher. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it just depends on how you feel and, you know, are you getting 2 to 1? Are you getting 3, 4, 5 to 1 on your money? How are you feeling? Do you think it's going to keep going? There's a lot of factors that go into when you enter and exit. And exiting is even more important than entry, because on an entry you can go and you can you know, go in some drawdown if you know the move's going to be in your favor. But if you miss your exit, you're losing out on profit, and that's never a good thing. So that was a good trade. That was a good example of a fall out of a supply zone, break through the trend line, break through the 50 SMA, came back up through the 50 SMA, found resistance at the line the trend line where we broke out before, and we made a down pretty much with a double top and found some nice profits, nice gains. Let's do one live that I didn't just find randomly. Let's see here. Okay, so let's do this one. Let's move it like this. Let's find a little trend line going a little bit more horizontal here. Let's just kind of draw it in like this. All right, so we see price bounce, all right, bounce, come up, bounce, come up, bounce, come up, and then we get a big jump out of this demand zone here and come up to a supply zone. All right, so supply zone, boom, draw it in. Price falls out of the supply zone, comes straight down through that 50 SMA with crazy momentum, no resistance really. You could have took a trade here. You pretty much, at this point, in my mind, I would be thinking, okay, we're definitely coming down to test the trend line. I mean, that's just like obvious to me. Maybe we don't break the trend line, but we definitely are coming down to test the trend line. So you technically could have taken a trade right at the break and close of this 50 SMA, and you would actually probably seen this do this, come back up, and see this candle right here just fall straight through. So you were already in for the breakout. You didn't even need to take a trade here because you're already in the trade, right? Because it's based off the momentum coming through that 50. And that's being a little bit ambitious, and like I said, that's for a little bit more advanced trader. But if you're playing it safe, your entry point is right here, right at the breakout, and you're getting a big red candle here. And previous touch points have just found crazy support. It just bounced right off. So you know that if it's coming down with momentum like this, it's probably going to be some downside, all right? And you could have took a trade here and made some really good money just using this simple trend line strategy. Now, I don't recommend just using this. Like I said, you can get wrecked doing this too, all right? I promise you. You can. It looks easy backtesting, and it is easy to backtest this. In the moment is a much different game, and it is a psychological war. When you're trading real money and you're not just backtesting, there's a lot on the line. I mean, your hard-earned money's on the line. If you're wrong and you make a bad decision, you make a bad trade, you could pay the price for it, and that's never a good thing, all right? So that's a good example of the trend line. You just got to understand what you're looking at and take into account multiple things, right? Falling out of the supply zone, that's number one. Number two, breaking that 50 SMA again with momentum, all right? And coming back for a little pullback here and forming a double top. That's another thing that I see here on the price action that tells me that we're probably breaking through this trend line on this move, all right? Little pullback here off the trend line and double top, likely gonna see downside just based off that, and then you do get that, all right? So that's a good trade right there. Let's find another one before I close the video off. I don't wanna make too long of a video here, but let's see. All right, we'll draw one here. Let's do it like this. All right, that looks good to me. That looks fairly good. All right, so basically, actually we'll do it like this. No, we're gonna do it like this. I take that back. We're gonna do it like this, right at the base. All right, so basically, guys, what happens here? Price is coming out of a demand zone. All right, we're gonna go through this together. Coming out of demand zone right here. Price is leaving real quick, breaks that 50 SMA, retest the 50. Like I said, guys, a lot of the time you're gonna get a retest on the breaks of anything, a zone, an SMA, a trend line, all that. So, you know, you could take the breakout here, but you would have went into some drawdown. All right, the real good trade here was taking the retest, right? The break of the 50, retest, take the trade here, you come in a little bit of drawdown, and then you make your big gains there on that. So that's a good trade. But let's keep going. Price comes up and comes all the way up here and breaks back down below the 50 and does that a few times. Touch point on the trend line right here. So now we know we have a valid trend line. We got 2 touch points. We can draw our trend line in. So we have the trend line drawn in here now. All right, now price comes up and once again, leaves a big supply zone with crazy momentum. All right, we know it's coming down. It's coming down at least to structure. All right, at least. So at a bare minimum, it's going to come down to this line right here. All right, bare minimum. It broke through the level of structure. It broke through the 50 SMA once again with some crazy momentum. All right, you can see this. We already know it's testing the trend line. All right, now I'm not saying that it's going to, you know, just bust through because this one didn't. If you look closely, what actually happened here was that price came down to the trend line. It did break the trend line. So you got faked out here. If you took the breakout here, you got faked out. All right, and you went into drawdown because it went back all the way to structure, and then it came back down through the 50 SMA, big red candle, and broke through, and that's when we got, you know, actually a pretty decent breakout here, then another retest, another break back through the zone. You might have got scared here and sold. This was kind of a volatile trade. But if you took the breakout here, all right, and even if you took the breakout here, all right, and you put your stop loss at structure, you never really got stopped out, right? You never got stopped out. Because I would have set my stop loss up here and it never would have stopped me out. I would have been in drawdown, I would have been in the red on this trade, but I would have inevitably made a lot of money. And I would have probably made, you know, a good 3.5 to 1 on this if I would have held this. And that's what happened. And not only on this breakout did we make money, but we had a retest. We had a retest right here. And the retest entry was right here, and you would have made some money, and, you know, you really never would have went into drawdown at all. You would have had slight drawdown here. You would have came down. You would have consolidated in this area just a little bit here. And then you would have had the break, and you would have had the fall off, and you would have made some money. All right, and you got to take all this into account. I know it looks easy back testing, and it's not this easy live trading. It's not as smooth as this looks, but this is essentially what my brain is doing when I'm looking at entering and exiting trades, and I'm taking all this information into account because the data on the screen tells you everything you need to know. All right, all you can do is make a high probability trade. That's all you can do. The rest is up to the stock and the Forex and the future gods. All right, that's just how it goes. All right, but that was a good trade. We had a breakout, we had a retest. That was 2 good trades right there. Let's do one more for the video. Let's try one more. All right, here we go. Here's another little good one. Let's do it like this. So try to get it as accurate as possible. There's some slight variance in this one, but it's okay. We'll do it like we see it here. Right here. All right, that looks good. So we have big double bottom here. Price went up. All right, did its thing, came up, making higher highs, hit a supply zone, dropped down, had a couple touch points on the trend line here. That was when we draw the trend line in. All right, we found some support and made our way back up to make a higher high. Now price finally came back down again, tested the trend line here, and we came up, we came back, we tested. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 major friction points on this trend line, and finally we hit the supply zone again up here, which, by the way, it's already been hit 3 times. If you look at this, all right, we already could have made money just trading the supply zone here. 1 fall, 2 fall, 3 fall. This time it fell through the trend line and the 50 SMA. You could have taken the breakout here on the trend line, or if you want to play it safe, you could have taken the retest, and the retest made some good money. The breakout was not too much here. It was not that much movement on this breakout, but you could have scalped a couple bucks off this. But the real play was the retest of the trend line and hitting another supply zone. Obviously, we didn't know this here. We could have if we looked to the left a little bit. But if you took the retest of the trend line, you broke back below the 50 SMA, and you probably took profit down here at structure, somewhere up in here. That's where most people would probably take it, and including me. I mean, it just kind of sucks to see your profits go up, and then boom, you're almost back to even up here. But then if you held, you would have made more, and I see that happen a lot. If you just end up just letting your stop loss play out, and just if you have confidence in your trade, just let it ride until you're down where this actually ended up, right? I mean, it's never going to be easy. It's not usually ever just going to fall off unless you're in a supply and demand zone, which sometimes it does. Like, for example, right here, this just fell straight off with no resistance. We know that's a supply zone. All right, we know that, and this was already got hit a couple times, so that's why it broke through it right here. And it just, once you do that, you can take a buy right here when it breaks and closes above the supply zone. That's a buy signal. All right, so there's all kinds of ways to make money in these markets, guys. But you got to master your trend lines. That's like kind of a basic thing, but you got to understand it. Anybody can draw a trend line in. It's very easy to do that, all right? But to understand how to trade off the trend line and why to trade off the trend line is more important than just knowing how to draw it in. It all comes together, and it all will make you a better trader. Knowing supply and demand, knowing how to master your trend line, and just really just understanding the fundamentals of price action. All right, this was a couple examples, guys, of how to use a trend line. I'm just trying to make more content for the channel. If you guys like this video, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up on the video, like the video, hit the subscribe button on my channel, and hit that notification bell to get notified when I go live. If you guys want more content, let me know in the comments, all right? Peace and love from my end. TradeModeJames signing out.